I'm joined here at the DNC in Chicago with Congressman Jamie Raskin. Thanks so much for joining me.
Thanks for having me, Brian.
Now, we've spoken a lot about Donald Trump and his authoritarianism, and a lot of his authoritarian proclivities rely on him being able to market himself as a strongman. But what we've seen over the last few weeks is anything but strong.
Yeah.
He's been dissembling at his press conferences, at his rallies, even this week in particular. So do you think that Donald Trump has met his match in terms of being able to continue branding himself as a tough guy in terms of what we're seeing now?
No, I don't think it. I know it, okay? Because the emperor's got no clothes, and that's always the crucial moment for the unraveling of the dictator.
Yeah.
When it can be demonstrated that they're just fundamentally ridiculous and insecure and narcissistic, which is what Donald Trump is. So he's going down hard, and he's going to have the well-deserved condemnation and ridicule of the country for what he's trying to do to us again.
And a lot of what we saw from Barack Obama, for example, was leaning in on the ridicule. And I think that Democrats are finally recognizing the point of all of this is to kind of dress him down and show that while he presents himself as a strong man, that in fact there's nothing strong about him, and a lot of it is laughable, and the names are childish, and the whole shtick is kind of tired at this point.
Well, like all bullies, he's fundamentally a coward.
Yeah.
And he proceeds on the basis of contempt and ridicule against people, especially people who have less power than him, like mocking people who have a disability, making fun of children, making fun of people's weight,
right,
which is an extraordinary thing. That's what he does. He was calling Senator Tester fat the other day.
Yeah.
I texted my friend who works for him, and I said, why don't you tell Senator Tester to say, well, I may be fat, but I'm not a fat rapist, you know?
Yeah. Now, what do you think that Democrats should do moving forward in terms of where they should focus their attention as we head toward this final sprint toward November?
I mean, we've got around 75 days to go. It's not a lot of time.
Yeah.
And I believe, well, we'll hear from Kamala Harris tomorrow, but I think she has totally framed the election in the right way. It's a career prosecutor versus a career criminal. It's freedom and democracy versus autocracy and corruption. It's rebuilding the forces of freedom around the world versus the authoritarians and the autocrats. And it's really for us the future versus the past, which is why every time there's a momentary break in the action here, people just start chanting, "We won't go back."
Right. Now, Donald Trump obviously has a particular focus on crowd size. You've been here in Chicago at the DNC for a few days here. We are in a sold-out arena.
Yes.
of just completely energized Democrats here filling this arena,
Yeah.
jam-packed. What do you think about the kind of switch here, where all of a sudden Donald Trump doesn't seem to be filling up his rallies quite so easily, and yet you have Democrats wall-to-wall packing these seats?
Well, also Trump has the exact same people going to each rally. It's like the Grateful Dead, you know? But for every one lucky person you see out there, tonight there are 500, if not 1,000 people who not only want to be in that seat, but tried to get in that seat, because my phone has been blowing up nonstop with constituents and friends saying, can you get me a pass to get in anywhere? You know, that's not what it's like over on the Republican side. They are a shrinking, shriveling minority party. They're, a cult of personality, and there's not that many people who are buying the cult and the dogma anymore.
Can you talk about this? Is what really surprised me about all of this is, even as somebody who focuses on messaging and persuasion, that is what I've dedicated my career toward, I would look at the campaign that Joe Biden was running, and you think that should be enough. When you're running against somebody like Donald Trump, it should be enough just unto itself. This guy is a threat to democracy with Donald Trump, and so it doesn't really matter who you put forward. It should be enough to defeat Donald Trump, and yet that wasn't the case with Biden. We were seeing low polling in Minnesota and New Mexico and Virginia, and if you're losing those states as Democrats, there is no path to 270. But can you talk about kind of the X factor here, something we haven't seen since 2008, which is just a campaign focused on optimism and hope and actually a vision for the future?
Well, it's a beautiful thing, and President Biden made it all possible by passing the baton, and it was a significant and heroic and brilliant thing to do because they had, in their bully-like fashion, fastened in on Joe Biden's age, and made an argument about infirmity and derangement and all that stuff. Well, they've made their bed. That's now their bed. Donald Trump's absolute derangement, infirmity, incapacity to be president of the United States. Meantime, we've got an extraordinary public leader in Kamala Harris, an incredible guy with a common touch in Tim Walz, and the winds at our back, because you can't fool the people twice in American democracy.
Right, and I think we're seeing also this idea of phoniness versus authenticity. And you have somebody like Donald Trump, for example, who already ran a campaign predicated on populism once, fake populism once, and yet when he came into office, all he was able to deliver was a tax cut for millionaires and billionaires. And then he picked somebody in JD Vance who, I believe it was you who said that he was Donald Trump's chameleon. Is that right?
His pet chameleon.
His pet chameleon.
Yes.
I mean, this is a guy who himself called Donald Trump America's Hitler, and now he's running on his ticket. This is somebody who runs apologia for Trump while he denies Americans biraciality, while he himself has 3 biracial kids. So this idea of just phoniness and inauthenticity is pervading the right, and I think people can see through it.
Well, look, Donald Trump is a genuine phony. He's a real con man. That's what he's done his whole life. JD Vance is a phony. I mean, he's not even a real con man and real phony. He just wants to be one, right? And
he's cosplaying as a phony.
Exactly. And look, JD Vance, everybody knows now, has no convictions. But that's okay, because Donald Trump has 36 and he can share. They can keep them together, and those will be the convictions. The moral convictions of the Democrats versus the criminal convictions of the Republicans.
And so what do you expect to see Donald Trump do moving forward as he tries to regain some of the momentum that has clearly slipped away?
Well, we know his MO and we know his playbook. You know, they're not going to try to come up with a great platform. They're not going to try to come up with great issue and policy proposals to expand their coalition. They've long since given up on that. They're going to lie about Kamala Harris and Tim Walz, and they're going to engage in slander and defamation. It's all they've got. But we've been getting ready for that. People here are saying we're ready not only to go out and win and campaign on the things we believe in, like choice and freedom and voting rights and infrastructure and all of the great accomplishments of the Biden-Harris administration. We're also ready to take the hits. We're armored for them. We're ready for all of the slander to come.
Well, not just slander. I actually want to get your thoughts on, you served on the January 6th committee. As Donald Trump becomes more and more unhinged and desperate, it elevates the possibility of violence or danger in the same way that we saw the insurrection on January 6, 2021.
Yes.
Does that worry you at all, the prospect of another insurrection?
Well, we've made some substantial improvements to the Electoral College Act, and we have improved the physical defense of the Capitol against MAGA insurrectionists and so on. But of course, it's not going to replay itself exactly the same way we saw it on January 6th. What we're going to see is an attack on the electoral process in the states through voter suppression mechanisms. They've been suing to try to, get rid of ballot boxes, get rid of early voting. Luckily, we've got great lawyers on our side. So far, the Republicans are losing every bogus claim that they're bringing to court. But we're ready for them, and we've got an army of strong Democratic lawyers prepared to fend off all of their attacks.
Let's finish off with this. What's been the most memorable moment of the convention for you so far?
Well, my kids came. Both my daughters were here. One of my son-in-laws were here, and it was actually coming out the first night, and to watch their reaction when they just saw the breathtaking scope and dimension of the crowd, and to feel the love and the commitment of all of those Democrats. It was an amazing thing. Of course, I got to go up on stage and give that speech. I guess the scariest moment is when the teleprompter broke down, and I never used a teleprompter before. As you know, I don't even use notes. I just get up and I start talking. They convinced me to use the teleprompter, and of course it broke down.
Yeah.
So.
Well, it was great watching you on that stage, and glad to have you fighting on our side. I know I speak for a lot of people in saying that. So, Congressman Raskin, thank you so much.
Thank you, Brian, and congratulations on your #1 New York Times bestseller.
Thank you.
Your book is incredible, man.
I appreciate it. Wouldn't be anything without you writing the foreword, so thank you.
Thank you.